Number 10. Home invasion gone wrong. Samantha Allison Weiner, an 18-year-old woman from Ponte Verde Beach in Florida, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in connection to a burglary gone wrong. It happened on September 21, 2020. Officers were called just after 1 o'clock in the morning to a burglary in progress and shots fired at a home near Beach Boulevard. When police arrived on the scene, they found Ezekiel Trey Archuleta dead in the front yard of the property. Somebody had shot the young man to death. But here's where things get really twisted and confusing. The man who was killed was not the victim of the home robbery, but rather the robber himself. It was the guy living in the house that shot him dead. Samantha was the orchestrator behind everything. Her ex-boyfriend was the one living in the house, and she wanted revenge on him. Samantha had asked multiple people to rob Roman Gerald Stewart Jr. in retaliation for him dumping her. After a lot of asking around, Ezekiel was the one who finally agreed to do the deed. But what he didn't realize was that when he moved in to rob Roman's house, Roman was locked and loaded. Roman killed Ezekiel before he could even get inside. And even though Roman got away with it on Florida's Stand Your Ground law, Samantha did not. She may not have physically been at the scene that night, but the fact that she organized the whole thing makes her just as culpable in the eyes of the law. Number 9. Stealing from the Autistic. This one is really cringeworthy. A woman from New Orleans has been given 20 years in prison for pretending to be a lawyer in order to loot the trust fund of an autistic man. Her name is Christina Galjor, and she pleaded guilty in 2021 to the theft of over $25,000. She also pleaded guilty to 3 counts of practicing law with no license. And as if robbing an autistic person wasn't terrible enough, she had 5 other victims as well, with whom she had collected at least $14,500 from. And she did all of this while pretending to be a lawyer. She used the money she stole from these people to fund exotic vacations and luxury goods for herself. In 2015, the autistic man's parents tragically died. They left him a multi-million-dollar trust fund and a home in New Orleans on Nashville Avenue. It was a terrible loss for the man, and they surely would have traded all that money just to see his parents again. But Christina didn't care about his money or his feelings. In 2016, she introduced herself as a lawyer to the victim. She gained his trust, then convinced him to hand over power of attorney over all his assets. Then, slowly but surely, she started draining him like a vampire. She purchased a new Jaguar, hosted fancy parties, went on shopping sprees, all while the unwitting victim was still grieving his parents. In 2017, she convinced the victim to hand over his house. She told him the only way he could avoid losing it was if he gave it over to her. This would be the big push that eventually had the victim go to the police, who arrested Christina in December 2019. She had 3 good years of robbing this poor man, and now she'll spend the next 20 locked behind bars. Number 8. Kidnapping the Wife. 2 people were left dead after a millionaire hired some men to kidnap his wife. It was something straight out of an episode of Fargo. This happened in the town of Lafayette, southern Louisiana. The year was 2017, and in early August, Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes prepared to do some kidnapping. The 2 men dressed themselves up as workers from an appliance store, armed themselves with semi-automatic handguns, and forced their way into Shonda Handley's home. They put a bag over her head and threw her in the back of a van. But things had gone wrong right from the beginning. A neighbor and her daughter happened to be visiting Shonda when the kidnappers showed up. They handcuffed these people and left them in the house. Already, they were off to a rough start. Then, an off-duty deputy saw the van driving on the shoulder of the road to skirt around traffic. The officer alerted his colleagues, and the kidnapping was foiled. There was a high-speed pursuit. The police chased the van until it eventually hit a dead end. The kidnappers then abandoned the vehicle and left Shonda trapped in the back. When they tried to elude the police by swimming through a canal, they drowned. In the end, it all came back to Lawrence Handley. He had cooked up the whole scheme so that he could swoop in at the end and save his wife from the 2 bad guys, thereby winning her affection back. The 2 were married, but not exactly together, and this was his secret plan to get her back in his arms. Sadly for the 2 men he hired, they both wound up dead in a canal. His wife now hates him more than ever. Plus, Lawrence is looking at 15 years in prison for hiring kidnappers. Number 7. Lawnmower DUI. In summer 2020, a man from Greenwood, Delaware was arrested on his 5th DUI. But there was something a little unusual about his arrest. You see, police responded to calls at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the subject acting disorderly in the grassy area on the side of the farm road. As it turned out, Ralph Cahall was absolutely wasted. Ralph had drunk himself into a stupor, climbed onto his lawnmower, and went for a drive. Since he already had 4 DUIs and didn't feel like getting another one, he thought he could get away with it by driving a lawnmower instead of a car. But that's not really how it works. Even if it is a lawnmower, it's still considered a motor vehicle. It's not like Ralph couldn't have had a few beers and drove his lawnmower on his own property, but the fact that he was going through yards, acting belligerent, and annoying the neighbors, well, that had him hauled off to jail for his 5th DUI offense. He was also charged with resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and criminal trespassing because he drove through people's lawns. Number 6. Failed truck heist. In November of 2021, an armored truck driving along a freeway in California spilled some of their cash. It happened on a Friday, just before 9 o'clock in the morning. The California Highway Patrol began getting 911 calls that there was actual money scattered across a part of the Interstate 5, backing up traffic. The truck had lost a significant amount of cash, and it was all over the road. When people saw what was happening, they got out of their vehicles like a bunch of savage animals and scrounged to get as much of the cash into the pockets as they could. After all, who could just leave all that money lying on the road? But here's the thing about it. All the people who picked up the cash are now thieves. Just because it was on the road didn't mean it was fair game. It came out of an armored truck. The money still belonged to wherever the armored truck was taking it. When the cops arrived, most of the motorists did return the money they'd picked up from the ground, but several people were seen speeding away from the scene with their pockets stuffed full of $1 bills. 2 people were actually arrested for theft on the spot. These 2 individuals had accidentally locked themselves out of their car in their mad dash to pick up money, then got caught since they couldn't drive away. What would you do if you saw an armored truck lose its cash on the highway? Would you steal as much of it as you could and drive away? Or pretend there weren't thousands of dollars blowing across the street? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe before the end of the video. Number 5. Eaten alive. A Florida burglary suspect fleeing from the police in November of 2015 was foiled by something he would have never expected. The burglar, a man of just 22 named Matthew Riggins, was suspected of burglarizing homes in Florida. He had gone on a home invasion rampage, only to find himself in hot pursuit by law enforcement officers. To try and throw the cops off his trail, Matthew waded into a lake. He was hoping that if he hung out in the lake long enough, the police would leave the area and he could get away with his loot. Now, if you live in Florida, a lake is probably the last place you want to be hiding. The burglar was attacked and partially eaten by a massive alligator as he was hiding from the cops. When his body was later discovered and an autopsy was done, it was determined that he drowned during the alligator's assault. A necropsy done on the alligator showed parts of Matthew's body in its stomach. Number 4. Accidentally murdering the murderer in the middle of a murder. It was January 2022 when something both strange and tragic happened in West London. A man drove over a man and a woman, but he did it with good intentions. The 26-year-old driver was trying to stop the man from stabbing the woman to death. You see, the attack was already underway. A man had a knife. He was repeatedly stabbing the woman with it in front of horrified onlookers in Chippenham Road, and there was nothing anybody could do to stop it. It was horrific. There was blood everywhere, and the bystanders were too afraid to take the knife from the deranged lunatic. But not the guy in his car. When he saw what was happening, he steered his vehicle directly into them. His plan was to run over the man with the knife, thereby saving the woman, but he accidentally ran them both over. Her coat got stuck under one of the wheels, and she went underneath the car. Yes, he ended up killing the murderer, who was in the middle of committing a murder, but he also ran over the woman he was trying to protect. It came out later that the man with the knife was Leon McCasker, the ex-boyfriend of Yasmin Chikafi. By the time the car ran them both over, Yasmin had already been stabbed to death by Leon. Both died on scene, in what was a horrible incident of domestic violence at its worst. As for the man behind the wheel who was just trying to help, he was branded a hero by the family of the victim and never charged with murder. Number 3. Burglary Fail. A robbery went very bad in Washington back in December of 2021. James Smith was home with his sister when a pair of robbers kicked in his back door just after 4 o'clock in the morning. It was a Thursday, and the rest of the neighborhood was quiet. Jeremy doesn't know why they picked his house, located about 45 miles from Seattle in Spanaway, and he didn't care. When he saw that one of the men was armed, he pulled out a gun and shot them both. One of the burglars was left unresponsive on the floor, while the other escaped the property with a bullet wound. The robber who escaped still hasn't been found and is considered at large. So far as the cops know, he is currently walking around with a bullet lodged in his body somewhere. The first robber, who was the one laying unresponsive on the floor, ended up dying there in the house he was trying to rob. As for Jaram, he was never charged with murder or manslaughter because he was only defending himself. He didn't go looking to shoot anybody, and he's terribly shaken up about having to kill a man. But when 2 strange men kicked open his door in the middle of the night, it was all he could do to protect his family. Number 2. The Craigslist Hitman. A man from Colorado has been given 48 years in prison because of one dead woman, one very poor choice, and a Craigslist ad for a hitman. His name is Joseph Lopez, just 23 years old, when he pled guilty to second-degree murder. The victim was Natalie Bollinger, killed on December 29, 2017. Lopez put a single bullet straight through her head, execution style, as she knelt in front of him. According to a statement from the Adams County District Attorney's Office, he had done it in response to an ad on the single section for the hit. But here's where things get totally wacky. The ad for the hit was put there by Natalie. She had put out an assassin's contract on herself. It came out during the trial that Joseph and Natalie exchanged dozens of text messages before he drove to her apartment, picked her up, and killed her. He had even answered the ad pretending to be an experienced hired killer. After texting for just 2 hours, the pair met in real life. Obviously, this never should have happened. Even if Natalie had put out a hit on herself, Joseph was a real psycho for going along with it. All he even got out of the deal was to take someone's life, a free gun, and the measly contents of Natalie's purse. When an autopsy was done, it became clear that she had an almost lethal level of heroin in her system, so she was drugged and not in her right state of mind. Yet, instead of alerting the police and getting Natalie the help she deserved, Joseph allowed himself to become the Grim Reaper. Number 1. LA Hit and Run. On February 20th, 2021, a homeless man in Los Angeles decided he needed to steal a truck. It was a big success, and a crime he might have gotten away with. That is, if not for the fact that as he sped away, he ran over a woman with his truck. He didn't just clip this innocent bystander with a stolen truck. He drove right over her and severely injured her. It happened late at night, with the homeless man stealing a 2001 Toyota Tundra. This is a big truck, not something you want plowing into as you're walking across the street. He struck a female pedestrian who never even saw it coming. She was rushed to the hospital and later released, but she'll be traumatized and scarred for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, the thief knew he was in big trouble. He abandoned the truck before he could ever sell it or get anything out of it, and ran away. When police checked the truck for DNA evidence, they were able to identify the man as Tajon Wright Freeman, a person with a history of felonies. He was already a wanted man, even before he ran over a pedestrian and then took off into the shadows.
Number 10. The Sydney River McDonalds Murders. On May 7, 1992, the unthinkable happened at a McDonald's restaurant at Sydney River, Nova Scotia. A trio of friends walked into the establishment with the intention of robbing it. Instead, they ended up murdering 3 people and disabling a 4th. It was one of the biggest high-profile murder cases in Canadian history at the time. What made it so crazy was how young these kids were, as well as the fact that one of them was an employee at the fast food restaurant. Derek Wood was an 18-year-old kid working at McDonald's. He and his two buddies, Freedom Daniel McNeil and Darren Muse, broke into the store after it was closed. They entered through a basement door that Derek had left slightly ajar earlier in the night. When they went in and discovered that there were 4 employees still inside, some kind of madness took over these boys. They murdered the 3 victims with a collection of terrifying weapons, including a .22 caliber pistol, a shovel handle, and knives. After they finished massacring everyone in the store, they made off with the cash. They had gone in expecting to find a huge payout of over $200,000. Instead, they got $2,017, which is definitely not worth killing people over. This crime was committed in a very rural town, in a small place in Canada most Canadians don't even know about. The location isn't even around anymore. It was demolished in 2000 and is currently an empty lot. These boys had no chance of getting away with the crime. It wasn't like they could just drive away and blend into the city. They were known by the community and by the people they slayed. All of them were given sentences of 20 years. Darren Muse was paroled in 2012, while Derek Woods' parole application was rejected in 2015. Number 9. Revenge slaying. At a McDonald's restaurant in Edmonton, North London, a 16-year-old catering student was brutally murdered in what authorities have described as revenge execution killing. According to Judge Michael Coombe, Danny Westmacott was the victim of a vicious murder carried out via execution. The death of Danny started at a children's party in McDonald's. On the night of the murder, Danny and another teen got into a very silly argument. The other teenager, Noel Sales, didn't like the way Danny was looking at him and the girls he was with. The teenager wanted to be a tough guy. He called Danny out for really no other reason than to start a fight. But the bully lost the fight. Danny wrestled him to the ground and kicked him until Noel looked like he was going to cry. Noel, who was only 15, then phoned a friend and told them to bring a knife. Noel went out of the restaurant, met with 3 other friends, and then went straight back inside and started stabbing. He approached Danny from behind and stuck a knife in his back, killing him almost instantly. This tragedy goes to show that even if you win a fight, you often still lose. It's always better to avoid confrontations, especially with teenagers, at McDonald's. Number 8. Dead in the fridge. A worker at McDonald's was crushed to death. It happened in southern Poland at a McDonald's branch in the city of Ostrowiec Świętokrzyski. The woman's identity is not being given out for privacy reasons, but we do know how she was crushed. She had gone into the enormous walk-in refrigerator when a shelf full of products fell on her head. The entire shelf toppled over, taking the woman with it and crushing her small body as if someone had dropped an anvil on her. She wasn't discovered for a full 10 minutes until another worker opened the refrigerator and found her pinned beneath the shelf. Sadly, this woman lived her entire life, just over 3 decades, to perish on the floor of a McDonald's refrigerator. It sucked big time, and we still don't know how it happened. The restaurant was shut down and an investigation was launched, but we still don't know why the shelf fell. It looks like it was just one of those freak accidents, something you can't see coming. Number 7. Death by electrocution. In Belfast, Northern Ireland, a young student was electrocuted at a McDonald's while trying to use the bathroom. Sierra McGinley collapsed on the bathroom floor stone cold dead after she touched an exposed live wire on the hand dryer. She hit the button on the annoying hand dryer, and in return, it gave her an electric shock that she would never recover from. This was a tragic and rather bizarre accident. But what made it really despicable was that the owners of the particular restaurant franchise already knew there was a problem with the dryer and failed to act. There had already been at least 3 complaints about the hand dryer from people using the bathroom in the 2 weeks prior to the fatality. One of the complaints was made just hours before Sierra's death. If managers had listened and done something to fix the hand dryer, the young woman might still be alive today. Sierra was a language student at Queen's University in Belfast. Her death came just as she was out celebrating the end of her exams in June. The celebration brought Sierra and her friends for a late-night burger, and washing her hands ultimately cost the woman her life. Number 6. Toxic fumes. In Georgia, a senior citizen died after visiting the bathroom of a McDonald's restaurant. She was 80 years old. Besides her, 9 other people in the restaurant became sick. There was a carbon dioxide leak that nearly cost all these innocent people their very lives. The leak happened at a restaurant in Pooler. For anyone who knows anything about soda machines, you'll know that carbon dioxide is pushed through plastic tubing from a cylinder to the soda machines. When investigators looked at the restaurant, they found dangerously high levels of carbon dioxide leaking into the bathroom through the walls. But here's where things get really scary, According to Pooler Fire Chief Wade Simmons, similar leaks have occurred at other restaurants in other cities because the lines go through the walls and into the ceilings. It's not that unusual for one of them to leak fumes. In this case, all that happened was the bathroom got sealed while the investigation was ongoing. The restaurant wasn't even closed down, and this is despite the fact that 10 people were exposed to so much carbon dioxide that one of them dropped dead and the rest became violently sick. 3 of those 10 people were firefighters investigating the fumes. They themselves became sick and had to be sent to the hospital. What do you think should happen to a restaurant that is known for poisoning its customers with toxic carbon dioxide in the bathroom? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5. The Jiayuan McDonald's cult murder. On May 28, 2014, tragedy struck at a McDonald's restaurant in Jiayuan, China. A woman named Wu Shuan was sitting at a table inside the mall McDonald's waiting to meet her husband and their young son. As she was sitting there, a group of 6 people entered the restaurant. They claimed to be missionaries and ordered everybody to hand over their phone numbers. It was extremely bizarre. When they asked Wu for her number, she declined. The missionaries became so angry that they used mops to beat her. What began as a very strange day at McDonald's ended in a vicious killing. They continued beating the woman with mops, smashing her with a chair, and even stomping on her face and head. One of the attackers was quoted as screaming, "Die, evil spirit," while another warned other customers not to interfere or they would die too. Nobody interfered, and Wu died from her injuries, but the attack was captured on camera, and every single one of the attackers were quickly arrested by the authorities. Chinese police said that they were members of a cultic organization known as the Church of Almighty God, or Eastern Lighting. When these murderers were taken to court, they showed no sign of remorse. They continuously called Wu a demon, saying they had no choice than to destroy her because she was evil. The Chinese government had already banned this organization from functioning. They were described as psychopaths and complete lunatics who had no business operating in society. The Chinese government had no problem putting 2 of the defendants to death by execution. In February 2015, the other defendants were given life in prison. Number 4. Rage in the drive-thru. In Jacksonville, a woman was shot dead in the drive-thru of McDonald's on Bay Meadows Road. It was horrific by every account. The woman was sitting in her car, minding her own business and ordering her food, when the assailant came creeping up around her vehicle. The guy leaned into her car and shot her at almost point-blank range. The bullet ripped apart her neck and head, and she bled and suffered for quite some time before eventually dying at the hospital. Why would somebody do such a horrendous thing? It was a disgruntled boyfriend. A man named Rashid Al-Karim was eventually tracked down by the police and arrested for murder. It took a jury no more than 90 minutes to find him guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. He had been stalking the victim, Jamie Marie Roque, and threatening to kill her for months. But the police could never do anything because Rashid hadn't actually done something actionable. But when he did do something, he did it big, with a bang. Now Jamie's dead, and he's behind bars, probably for life. Number 3. Too big of a bite. Darren Bray died while trying to eat a McDonald's cheeseburger. Darren, a father to 3 children, choked to death when he tried to consume the whole burger in just one mouthful. The 29-year-old had been showing off to his friends. They were on a night out, they got the munchies, and they went to the nearest McDonald's. Darren ordered a cheeseburger, then told his friends, "Watch this." He put the burger in his mouth and tried to swallow it. His friends laughed and howled. Then things turned grim. Darren went blue like a Smurf and started to choke. Nobody was sure what to do. These guys weren't exactly doctors. Darren's friends watched helplessly and horrified as he died. One of them tried to slap him on the back to clear his airway, but it didn't do any good. Darren was coughing, gurgling, and making noises that would give you nightmares. None of his friends had any idea how to perform the Heimlich maneuver, which very well could have saved his life. Instead, they all just stood around and waited for paramedics to arrive. When they got there, the paramedics performed CPR and tried to restart Darren's heart, but he was dead. The Cardiff Coroner's Court reported that Darren died from a blockage to his airway. So, let this be a lesson, folks. Please chew your food. Number 2. The McDonald's Toilet. In Germany, a 48-year-old man went to get lunch at a McDonald's. He was a gas station attendant working across the street who loved himself a big, juicy burger for his midday snack. But this would be the very last snack he ever had. He went into the bathroom of the McDonald's and never came out again. The truly shocking thing is that nobody found his corpse until the next day. It was after lunch that his boss started asking staff at the McDonald's if anyone had seen him. He knew he went to get lunch and then never came back to work, and that was not like him at all. The McDonald's staff checked the surveillance footage. They found that he had entered the store, but never left. It was at about this time that everybody had figured out what happened. They crept into the bathroom, where they found a single cubicle with the door locked and a very bad smell coming from beyond. The man had gone to eat his lunch, became overwhelmed, and needed to use the bathroom, and died right there on the spot. We don't know the exact cause of death, but chances are pretty good that he had a heart attack. After all, he worked at a gas station and ate most of his lunches under the Golden Arches. And number 1, dead and unnoticed. In Hong Kong, a homeless woman entered a McDonald's very early on a Friday morning. She found herself a table in a dark corner near the bathroom and sat down. And there she stayed, unmoving, throughout the entire day. Nobody kicked her out or even really noticed her. Then at around 1:20 in the morning on Saturday, her head suddenly hit the table. That was when she died, but it looked like she was just sleeping. It took another 7 hours before somebody finally realized this woman had dropped dead. Customers were coming in and out of the restaurant, sitting at the table beside her, eating their food, and not realizing that they were dining with the dead. Police and paramedics finally came to remove the body at about 8:30 in the morning. They didn't find anything suspicious about her death. She was around the age of 60, with no belongings except a ratty old bag and a wallet with no identification or documents. Nobody even knows who this woman was or where she came from. Authorities figured she must have known that she was dying and came in from the street to sit down at a comfortable table and expire in peace.
10. Maya Mallette. Maya Mallette was last seen on the night of January 7th in her home in Chula Vista. 9 months after she disappeared, her husband Larry was arrested for her murder. However, during his court hearing, he entered a plea of not guilty in the first-degree murder of his wife. Whether he truly killed Maya or not has yet to be proven by the court. It all started when Maya wanted a divorce in 2020. She had a meeting scheduled with a divorce lawyer right before she suddenly vanished. Friends described the couple's marriage as toxic. District Attorney Summer Stefan, who's working to get Larry locked behind bars, also said he was kind of crazy. He once contacted a spellcaster, a person claiming to have magical abilities, to force Maya into staying in the relationship. Larry asked the magician to make Maya have an accident, preferably with broken bones involved. That way, she would have to stay home with him. This is the kind of person Larry was. Maya sent a message to her family on the night of the 7th, 4 hours before her phone activity stopped at around 1 o'clock in the morning. At the same time, Larry could be seen on surveillance footage backing up the family car to a blind spot on the camera. Larry then left his home the next day at around 6:45 in the morning, but didn't bring his phone or his 2 older children. He only brought their 4-year-old. He was gone for 11 hours and 21 minutes. When the police asked where he went, he claimed they were at Solana Beach. It was actually pretty sneaky on Larry's part. The cops had no way to track him and no way to confirm he was or wasn't at the beach. Still, they're almost positive he was spending those 11 hours getting rid of his wife's body. They just can't prove it yet. 9. Thomas Howe. On January 22, 2022, Thomas Howe from Chicago crashed his vehicle on Interstate 94. Other than that, nobody is entirely sure what happened to him. He was driving to his family's home in Antioch when he smashed into another vehicle near mile marker 16. This is according to the Antioch Police Department. A witness saw Thomas walk away from the scene of the accident, allegedly heading in the direction of the Old School Forest Preserve. This was the last confirmed sighting of Thomas. Nobody's seen him since, with the only clue he left behind being his cell phone about a quarter mile into the forest preserve, ditched in the dirt. There is currently a reward of $10,000 for anyone who can give the police information that directly leads to Thomas's discovery. His parents are pleading for help, and investigators have so far sifted through over 2,000 tips from across the country. One of the tips was from someone who claimed to see Thomas in Las Vegas, but this was never confirmed. What's really awful is that none of this even makes sense. Thomas was on his way to see his family. He was extremely close with them and wouldn't have just left his parents wondering what happened. And then there's the deal with the phone. Why would he ditch his phone after walking into the woods, even if he was rattled from the accident? He wasn't in any trouble. He hadn't done anything wrong. Yet he seemingly fled into the forest and disappeared. Not even the police canine units were able to get his scent. 8. Jake Sephia. Jake Sephia went missing at the beginning of August 2021. In the years prior to his disappearance, he was living the lifestyle everybody dreamed of. He traveled around the world as a top executive at United Airlines. He was the senior vice president of worldwide sales. In other words, Jake was filthy rich. He spent a lot of his time living the extreme bachelor life in places like Hong Kong, London, and Singapore. According to police reports, their investigation also showed that he was a serial dater. He was meeting girls on Bumble in Chicago, San Francisco, California, and Honolulu. But here's where things get strange. The very last purchase he made on his credit card was at a gas station in Illinois, not far from his house in Elmhurst. A video from the gas station showed him wearing hiking boots, cargo shorts, and a baseball cap. His car was seen on a traffic camera at 9:30 that morning, and then he vanished. The day before, the Elmhurst police had showed up at his house with a search warrant to collect evidence, but the police have declined to say what they were investigating, and Jake was never charged with a crime. He seems to have run away, but it's been over a year and he hasn't resurfaced yet. The police did find his car. It was parked in the DuPage County Forest Preserve. Officers used bloodhounds to track his scent, but lost him 20 yards into the woods. Nobody has any idea where he went. 7. Tatum Morel. Last summer, Tatum Morel walked into the Montana mountains by herself and never came out. At 23 years old, she was determined to climb all 5 mountain peaks solo and return after 5 days. However, after stopping briefly at the Red Lodge to prepare for her journey, she vanished. She made her final contact with her family on July 1st at the lodge, but after 5 days had gone by and her family never heard from her again, they feared the worst. Now, after a desperate search attempt, no trace of her has been found, and she's been assumed dead. Canine units, fire rescue, helicopters, everyone was out searching. They looked across mountain peaks, lakes, and anywhere the West Fork trailhead may have taken Tatum Morel. They never found her. Sadly, they had to give up the search. As terrible as it is, they can't put all their resources into combing every last inch of the Montana wilderness. It's just not possible. Some of these peaks are 12,000 feet tall, with dense forest going on for hundreds of miles. She could be anywhere, or she could be nowhere. The only solace Tatum's family has is how she perished. If she did indeed die, she died doing something she loved, exploring the great outdoors. 6. Nomi Bouevard. Nomi Bouevard might still be alive. At least that's what the private investigator looking for her has told news sources. She's been missing for over a year, but there's still hope. On February 11, 2021, Nomi initiated a conversation with 3 of her friends through text messages and then ghosted them. She started the conversations, made no reply, and then shut her phone off. As a member of the Mormon community in Hollywood, this was a pretty big shock for her family and friends. They almost immediately assumed the worst, but Joe Carrillo says there may be nothing wrong. Joe was hired independently of the police to track Nomi down. Through his investigation, he learned the young girl was struggling with her faith. She no longer believed in what her fellow Mormons believed in and was looking to abandon the church. He believes she may have simply cut ties with everyone she knew, got on a bus, and vanished. Nonetheless, Joe is still searching. He won't rest until he finds proof of life, or in the worst case, proof of death. Nomi was last seen getting on a bus on Sheridan Street, then going to the Ann Kolb Nature Center. After that, her trail is cold as ice. Do you think Nomi just ran away, or do you suspect something more sinister? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. 5. Shayne Bell. Shayne Keeler Bell was missing for 4 months before her body was finally discovered in June of 2021. She went missing from the Canadian city of Chilliwack, near Vancouver. At only 23 years old, Shayne was a fairly normal woman. She had her own apartment in the city, she had 2 young kids, and she was well liked by her friends. But on January 30th, she was last seen exiting her apartment with an unknown destination. 2 days later, her Hyundai Tucson was found completely abandoned. 4 months after that, the police found her corpse in the Fraser River near Coquitlam, also near Vancouver. Nobody knows how she got there or what happened in the 120 days between. According to what the Chilliwack Royal Canadian Mounted Police have said, their investigation is over. They found nothing to suggest criminal involvement. However, the British Columbia Coroner's Office is now conducting their own investigation to see how she died and when. Even though the police say there's nothing here to see, that doesn't mean there wasn't foul play. They could be lying. The thing is that Shayne's body was found just after 2 other women were discovered dead in the Hope area. 2 other women who had gone missing without a trace. And on May 26th, a former missing woman was discovered dead on the side of a highway near the town of Hope. That's 4 dead women in as many years, all near Vancouver. And yet the police are saying there's nothing to worry about. 4. Anne-Marie Cusimano. Anne-Marie Cusimano ceased all contact with her family on Long Island on December 17, 2021. Police in Brooklyn saw her 10 days later at a hotel. But after she left the hotel, she vanished into obscurity and hasn't been seen since. The reason the police knew she was at the hotel is because they had gotten a disturbance call. Anne-Marie was there with another woman and a man, all of whom were arguing. She left the hotel, also leaving behind personal belongings like her identification. At the same time, her estranged husband was being arrested in Queens for beating and robbing Anne-Marie. About 1 hour before all this was happening, her parents officially reported her missing to the police because they hadn't spoken to her in 10 days. She was roughly 10 weeks pregnant. It's been a month now and there's still no sign of her. We don't know if she's hiding on purpose or if she's even still in New York City. 3. Christopher Woitel. Christopher Woitel is the man who walked into his home and never walked out again. It happened on January 8, 2022. Christopher was caught by the security camera outside his apartment building walking into his residence. That same security camera never caught him walking out. He contacted his mother on January 9th, the day after he was seen in his house. But 4 days later, on January 13th, she reported him missing because she hadn't heard from him. Naturally, the police went to Christopher's apartment and searched it, but they didn't find anything. Nothing out of place or disturbed. The only way he could have gotten out was through the back door, but the camera didn't catch him leaving. He somehow pulled a Houdini and disappeared into thin air. It's been over a month now and he still hasn't been found. The case gets even stranger still, or maybe I should say scarier. According to Christopher's sister, he was an extremely generous man. He often extended his home to people in need of a place to sleep. This sometimes meant people living on the streets. But as of yet, police haven't been able to find any vagrants who could have been capable of vanishing a man out of his house. Plus, there was no sign of a struggle in the apartment and no blood. It's totally baffling, and neither the private investigator hired by the family nor the police have been able to make any headway. 2. Kevin Winters. Kevin Winters went to a First Hawaiian Bank ATM in Kahana on September 3, 2021. It was 6:45 in the morning, and he deposited a check from his mother. After that, nobody has any idea what happened to him. Kevin moved to Maui from Michigan in 2007 out of the blue. He had nothing but a single bag and dreams of living in paradise. He fell in love with the island, got a job, and lived at a hostel in downtown Wailuku. He was single, he had no family near him, but he made regular calls to his mother almost every single day. On September 2nd, those calls ended. Things had taken a turn for Kevin just before his vanishing. According to his colleagues at the North Shore Hostel, where he traded labor for a free room, he had turned into a bit of a thief. He had to move out on September 1st after he got caught stealing somebody's cell phone. It was insanely out of character, especially since Kevin had worked there for 13 years. His colleagues said they had seen him rummage through the fridge before and take other people's food, but never something like a cell phone. And it also didn't make sense because Kevin wasn't totally broke. He still had a fair chunk of change in his bank account. He had no logical reason for taking somebody's phone. It's a weird story with no ending. Whatever happened to Kevin when he walked away from that ATM in September, we still don't know. 1. Mary Johnson. Mary Johnson and her husband packed up their stuff and abruptly moved out of Mary's sister's house. They went to the town of Marysville in Washington. Mary didn't speak with her family very often, and she didn't really reply to text messages from her sister. You might say she and her husband were a couple of loners. But one day, Mary's husband reached out to her sister to say that he hadn't seen Mary in weeks. The last time he saw her was in November of 2020, 30 days before Christmas. She was last seen walking down a road in western Washington, apparently to visit some friends in a nearby town, but she never showed up. Just over 1 year later, Mary is still missing. All we know about the case is that she and her husband had been having trouble. She had been mostly staying with a small group of friends, only returning to her house sometimes to shower and pick up her mail. When she set out walking, it was because the individual who was supposed to give her a ride never showed up. But sometime during that walk, somebody did give her a ride. The police saw that her cell phone connected to a different tower too far away for her to have reached by foot. But they don't know exactly where or how. Right now, it's pretty clear she got into somebody's vehicle she really shouldn't have. But because no body has been found, the police haven't been able to launch a murder investigation. Do you have any theories for these tragic missing person cases? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and come back soon for more shocking crime videos. Bye.